Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to begin by giving up praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and to the apostles of the millstone, and enough respect to the brothers out there pushing and spreading the gospel of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai to the four corners of the world. Now, through the spirit of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, I have this piece of document here from the United States, White House website, and Lord willing, I hope this is edifying. Now, the reason I think this is very interesting, the title of it actually is President Donald Trump ensures a national policy framework for artificial intelligence. And what we're going to find later on is that he is trying to prevent, individual states from, making up their own laws concerning artificial intelligence. He wants all the framework, all the decisions about AI concerning the American people to come from, the federal government. And it brings my mind to an article that I made a while back that showed how different states were making laws that banned the radio frequency identity chip. And just from looking at articles like this alone, I know that those states that are banning the radio frequency identity chips from being mandatory will ultimately have to go back or throw away that law, that ban, right? Because as we've seen here, the president, in fact, does have the executive power to throw away, right? To challenge, and whenever they challenge, they win. To challenge and to sometimes even make an absence. In other words, throw away, laws that conflict with their agenda to, digitalize the world or digitalize everything under their control. So that's why I thought this article was very interesting. So what I'm just going to do is just read through it, and Lord willing, this be edifying. If any precept comes into my mind, I'm going to bring it out. So it says, preventing a patchwork of AI regulations. Today, President Donald J. Trump signed an executive order to protect American AI innovation from an inconsistent and costly compliance against a regime resulting from varying state laws, right? So again, protecting American AI innovations from inconsistent and costly compliance regime resulting from varying state laws. So one of it, the first point is that the order directs the Attorney General to establish an AI litigation task force to challenge unconstitutional, preempted, or otherwise unlawful state AI laws that harm innovation. And you know how when this man first came on the scene, what he did was he sawed off a huge chunk of the United States government, right? He said, these guys were not necessary. Let's cut them off. Let's take away their finance, their funding. And as a result of that, a lot of government workers became unemployed. Now, why is this man setting up a new branch, right? And that task force seems to be people who will ensure the progression of a digitalized world. Interesting, right? Another precept, Isaiah 66. I love going to that chapter. Isaiah 66 and 5. Oh, actually. Verse 5. Actually, verse 4, yeah. I also will choose their delusions and will bring their fears upon them, because when I called, none did answer. When I spake, they did not hear, but they did evil before mine eyes, and choose that in which I delighted not. And so this is the Lord right now calling through his men. He is what? He is letting it be known how, right, you may make peace with him, how you can, escape the destruction right? Or how you can, uh, live a righteous life. But people ain't trying to hear these things. They don't want the heads up. They don't want the warning. They want to be caught up in the fear. But when it comes in, the Lord ain't he ain't gonna care. Okay, so verse 5 says, "Hear the word of the Lord Yahweh. Hear ye the word of the Lord Yahweh, ye that tremble at his word. Your brethren that hated you and cast you out for my name's sake said, Let the Lord Yahweh be glorified. But he shall appear to your joy, and they shall be ashamed." It's June, ain't no microchip. Well, check this out, man. It's all gonna come into play, the full picture. But what we keep saying is that the proof, once you finally have that undeniable proof, it's gonna be too late. Because what the Lord wants is for you to receive enough information, not an undeniable proof amount or anything, but because this is prophecy. Anything that is foretold in the future can never be undeniably proven. It can't be. It's impossible. It requires faith, belief. But people ain't trying to have all that. It says the order directs Secretary of Commerce to publish an evaluation of state AI laws that that conflict with national AI policy priorities. And as I went into the previous video, one of their priorities is for defense. Okay, so states out here that will try to come up with a ban. Oh, you can't have AI, robots in our streets enforcing justice, enforcing the law. Well, check this out. Now you can't do that no more. You know, hey, who's to say even the Miranda rights is gonna? I mean, what's it call it? AI is gonna have to need a warrant to knock down your door. People don't know these things. I'm telling you, these things are gonna change your world, and it's gonna give them so much because it's gonna give them so much power. A while back I went into a book. I did a video on this book called the Naked Capitalism, and it talked about how these men already they have control over the world through money and debt. They have the money, they have all that, but what they want is power, the complete control of your life, and they want people to recognize the control they have over their life. They don't want to be hiding behind the scenes trying to do this, that. They don't want to be in secret anymore. They want that glory of that world, and they want to be worshipped. So they're tired. The money doesn't, simply having the money doesn't give them that. They want that control over life, over freedom, over your mind, their knowledge, over your children, the generations to come. They want a kingdom of heaven, an everlasting one. That's what they want. And they want to be the gods and the kings, and you will be what? The serfs, the fucking peasants. That's why we tell you, Jakes, man, flee out the midst of Babylon. There is nothing left for you good. There's nothing good left on this other side, on the other side. And I'm talking time-wise. Only death and sorrows and woes, and you're gonna wish you had taken a different way. You would have, which is the salvation. But at that point, it's gonna be too late. It says other agencies are directed to consider whether to make an absence of similar laws or a policy of enforcement discretion with respect to any existing such laws, a condition of applicable discretionary grant programs. Okay, says the order instructs the federal. Give me a second. All right, Salakia. It says the order instructs the Federal Trade Commission and Federal Communications Commission to take actions that will limit states' ability to force AI companies to deceive customers, including determine whether laws that force companies to embed DEI into their models cause those companies to violate the Federal Trade Commission Act, and considering whether to adopt a federal reporting and disclosure standard for AI models. Okay? So the order calls for development of national AI legislative framework that would preempt state AI laws that stifle innovation. And like I said, when they make these plans, when they make these moves to take over and have complete control, they ain't gonna come right in and tell you this. They word it in a way that seems like it's a solution, just like they did with the federal bank. They started off the World War, and then when the world was rebuilding during the Reconstruction period, they we sweeping up, we got all this money. Matter of fact, once you pass laws that allows us to, set up a federal government where you can borrow, and we'll have even, government officials regulated. So it's, and then it all seems like a great solution. But they are con artists. President Trump is acting decisively to ensure our great technological pioneers can compete on the world stage, ensuring America's national security and economic prosperity in the age of AI. State legislators have introduced over 1,000 different AI bills, creating a patchwork of rules, disclosures, and reporting requirements, such as California and Colorado are considering requiring AI companies to censor outputs and insert left-wing ideology in their programming, reducing the compliance cost and development burdens associated with varying state laws will lower barriers to entry into AI and enhance innovations. Forgive me for that. And ensure that American companies are not subject to restrictions that their international competitors do not face. The most restrictive states should not be allowed to dictate national AI policy at the expense of American domination of this new frontier, right? They want the kingdom, That's why whenever they talk about, doing things for the good of the American people, American interests, it ain't your interest that they're worried about. What they're simply doing is preserving the system that made them rich and fat. Like the Northern Kingdom called them when they came here. They say they called them a name that simply not meant he who takes the fat. You go to West Africa, some people simply call him the wicked one. That's what they do. They are preserving a system, and they want to perfect that system. And then they evolve from men to gods. And so this is pretty much what this whole thing is about, right? It's that he's trying to, he's trying to remove every obstacle for the development of AI, right? And that is very, it's something huge that people ought to pay attention to. That's it, okay? And this eventually will loop into prophecy. It will. If they can prevent people from making laws against AI and technological innovations, well then, all those bans that I went into with the chip, they're going to take all that off. Because what? Like I said before, that's not uh, like a government. It's not set up that way. It's not just set up, to um, it's not just set up for what's the word I'm looking for when something is like out of reality, you know, for a fictitious, place or people. It's supposed to reflect real life problems, and the problem that they're facing is that what they need control. That's Esau's. That's what he's obsessed about. Esau is always obsessed about control. He wants control. That's why he can't be obedient, because to be obedient means to give up control. That's why he will never accept the Lord, right? Obey the Lord. That's why he's proud, because that's what a proud man does. To be humble means to what? To relinquish control. The Most High said, you know, this is your destiny. You're going to go into captivity. They said, nah, we will rebuild. Look at that. That's what he's obsessed about. That's all they do in the manufacturing plants. You go in there, all the number one thing that they always talk about is control. Because nothing they do is anything other than it begins with control. And any improvements, right, to whatever it is that they have that is precious also relies on how much control they have. So it's all about control. That's the word. Okay? And that control will culminate into the radio frequency identity chip being mandatory, and anyone who does not take it being made enemy of the state. And the scripture says that there have been saints who were killed for what? For standing up to that system. And that's the hour of temptation. How strong is your faith? How far will you go for the Lord? And for us, for those who are watching and figuring out the timelines and finding out that we're getting closer and closer and closer to it, we are the ones who have an advantage, because the more you find out that you're getting close to it, the more you prepare, the more you grow, the harder you fight. But you have people out there, even people who believe in Yahweh Hashem Yahshai, they ain't watching. They ain't doing their job as a watchman. If they don't have the spirit of prophecy and they are sheep, well, they still ain't watching. And then something big happens. And then they try to figure out what's going on, how did this happen, this, that, and the third. And then they find out when they get to the point where they got to make a stand, they can't make a stand, because they didn't know what the stand was going to be like, when the stand was going to be, because they weren't watching, they weren't preparing. Preparation is made even more effective when you understand that the day is close and close. When you understand the event, you think about, oh, do I have it? If you got to travel and the date just keep coming closer, let me make sure I have everything. When you got to go to the airport and the time is getting closer and closer, you keep thinking, oh, let me prepare, let me jump up, let me do this, that, and the third. But yeah, I'm gonna end right there. Giving all praise and glory unto Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai B'Hashem Recha Kodash. Hey Shalom Yahweh B'Hashem Yahshai B'Katham Toy Akim Senakwos that are listening in truth and sincerity. May the blessing of Allah should be upon the house. And until next time, Shalom.